In today's lecture, we shall start a discussion on the solution of a system of linear algebraic equations and the eigenvalue problems. The topic of the solution of the linear algebraic equations or eigenvalue problems is one of the very important topics of numerical analysis. The reason being that if you are solving a linear or non-linear ordinary differential equation, or a linear or non-linear partial differential equation, or a system of differential equations by any one of the numerical methods like finite difference method or finite L methods, we produce correspondingly a system of linear algebraic equations or non-linear algebraic equations. Now we know that non-linear algebraic equations can be solved by Newton's method, or a number of variants for the method are available for us. This reduces the given nonlinear system to a linear system and then solve this in an iterative procedure. Therefore, the basic problem is how to solve a linear system of algebraic equations. When such a system converges, how do we solve? What are the techniques for this? If the system is sufficiently small, how do we solve? If the system is very large, as it usually happens, for example, if you are designing a particular object and it is governs a system of partial differential equations, and the number of points at which we need to find the solutions goes in millions of points, therefore the system of equation that we get will be few millions of equations. How do you solve such huge system of equations? So we would like to have a discussion on such problems. What we are really looking for is a linear system of equations like a11 x1, a12 x2, so on, a1n xn is equal to b1, a21 x1 plus a22 x2 plus so on a2n xn is equal to b2, and an1 x1, an2 x2 plus so on ann xn is equal to bn. We are here discussing here a system of n into n equations. We are having a system of n into n equations. It is possible for us also to construct find the solution for a system of m into n equations, but we shall not be discussing here at the moment. Now here the variables x1, x2, xn corresponds to interpretation depends on the problem that we are solving, but in general we shall not be bothered about what x1, x2 are with respect to a corresponding problem. So depending on the physical problem, there could be stresses, there could be velocities, there could be accelerations, or there could be any other variable that is there in the physical problem. Now in order to have a discussion on this, let us write in the matrix representation. So what I would write is the matrix A as a coefficient matrix. So I will write this a11, a12, a1n, this is a21, a22, a2n, an1, an2, ann. So I will take this as a matrix A, and we will write down vector with a underscore as the vector b1, b2, bn, and the variable x as the solution vector x1, x2, xn. And if I write this coefficient matrix as A, the right hand side vector as B, and the solution vector as x, then I can write down the given system of equations as Ax is equal to B. So this will be my basic system of equations that we would like. I am interested in the matrix formulation and use the matrix formulation to derive the methods for the numerical solution of these equations. Now before we actually derive the numerical methods, let us just briefly review of what you have done, the properties of matrices, and because we shall be using those properties of matrices in deriving the methods, a particular methods suiting a particular type of system of equations, like if you have a symmetric system, if you have a Hermitian system, like that. So we depending on the type of equations that we have, we shall choose a particular method. So let us just briefly write down what are the properties of a matrix. So we shall take the matrix A as the elements are Aij. So that is what we have written, the elements are a11, a12, so on, a1n and so on. Now first of all we define a non-singular matrix, as if the determinant of the matrix A is not equal to 0, then we shall call it as a non-singular matrix. So I can find the value of the determinant and determinant is not equal to 0. Then I define a symmetric matrix, If the elements of A satisfy the property that Aij is equal to Aj, then the matrix is a symmetric matrix. For example, I can easily construct a symmetric matrix. I can fill these elements here, some 5 minus 2 minus 2 6. So for example, this is our a symmetric matrix, so that you have A12 is A21, A13 is A31, A23 is equal to A32, diagonal elements are given to us. So this is a symmetric matrix. Whereas if it satisfies the property that there is a minus sign here, then we shall say it is a skew symmetric matrix. So it is a skew symmetric matrix. In other words, these elements Aij is equal to minus Aj I. Now we can obviously see, but by setting I is equal to j, we can get Aii is equal to minus Aii. That means the diagonal elements are always 0, and obviously Aij is equal to minus Aj for all other elements I not equal to j. So the diagonal elements for a skew symmetric matrix are always 0. Then we define a null matrix as a matrix with all elements 0 elements. So all Aij is equal to 0. So we just have the null matrix as 0 0 0, so on 0 0 0 0. So it is just a null matrix with all elements of the matrix A are 0, then we shall say it is a null matrix, and we shall use the notation with 0 with underscore to say it is a vector we are talking of or a matrix we are talking of. Then we define a diagonal matrix, This is a matrix in which only diagonal elements are existing and off diagonal elements they are all zeros. So it means that Aii is not equal to 0 and Aij is equal to 0 for all I not equal to j. That means it will going to look like a matrix A11, A22, so on Ann, and these are all zeros. So the diagonal matrix will be simply the elements in the diagonal, they are all non-zero elements, and the off diagonal elements are 0 elements. Then we need a definition of unit matrix also. Unit matrix is a diagonal matrix with all diagonal elements as 1. So we shall denote this by I, so that the definition of this is simply 1 1 1 1, and these are all zeros. That means we are taking all elements Aii is equal to 1 and all off diagonal elements is equal to 0 for I not equal to j. We have this as a unit matrix. Then we define a lower triangular matrix, All the elements on the diagonal and below the diagonal they are non-zero, and the elements above the diagonal they are all 0. That means we are defining Aij is equal to 0 for j greater than I. That means we are talking of A12, A13, all of them are 0, therefore it is a this. That means I can write down the matrix in the form of, I will denote this lower triangular matrix by L. So I will write down the matrix L as L11, L21, L22, Ln1, Ln2, Lnn. All the elements above the diagonal are 0. So this is a lower triangular matrix. The elements in the lower triangular they are non-zero, and all the elements above the diagonal they are all 0. For example, a trivial example here is we can take this as, so this is a 3 by 3 lower triangular matrix in which the elements above the diagonal they are all 0. Similarly, we define an upper triangular matrix. This is a lower triangular matrix, so we define an upper triangular matrix. We denote an upper triangular matrix by U. All the elements on or above the diagonal are non-zero and all the elements below the diagonal are 0. That means we have U is equal to a matrix like U11, U12, U1n, U22, U2n, UNN, and this is all zeros. All the elements on or above the diagonal are non-zero and all the elements below the diagonal are 0. The important point we like to note here is the the inverse. So, if I want the inverse of a lower triangular matrix, if I have an inverse of a lower triangular matrix, that means L inverse I want, the L inverse is also lower triangular. Therefore, if I have a lower triangular matrix and I want its inverse, its inverse also will be a lower triangular matrix. L inverse is also lower triangular. This is an important property that we shall be using later on. Similarly, the inverse of an upper triangular matrix is also an upper triangular matrix. So, the inverse of an upper triangular matrix, which we shall denote it as U inverse, is also upper triangular. Both these properties we shall be using in constructing some of the numerical methods for the solution of the algebraic equations. Then we would like to define what is known as tridiagonal matrix. Say tridiagonal matrix. A tridiagonal matrix is one in which only the leading diagonal, one above and one below, that means the 3 diagonals are non-zero, all other elements of the matrix are zeros. That means what we have here is a matrix in which this diagonal, all other are zeros. These are non-zero elements, these are all non-zero elements. Sometimes it is called the leading diagonal, the super diagonal and sub diagonal. So, it is sometimes it also we call it as the diagonal, the super diagonal and sub diagonal. So, the elements of these 3 arrays are non-zero and all other elements are zeros. Mathematically, of course, we can say that this A I j is equal to 0 for all I j is greater than 1. So, only if the magnitude of the difference is 1, that means only these 3 diagonals it is going to be non-zero, otherwise it is going to be 0 for all other values. So, the tridiagonal system is very important thing that comes while solving the ordinary differential equations by any difference method that we get a system of linear algebraic equations in which the system is the only tridiagonal, and the solution of tridiagonal system is one of the important and also the simplest of all the systems that we can get it. Then we also define the Hermitian matrix. Hermitian matrix. Now we are talking of complex matrices, the elements of the matrix is complex. So, A is a complex matrix. A is a complex matrix. The notation for Hermitian matrix of A is there are various notations depending on the books. It is denoted by A star, or some books write it as A H, some books even write it as A with a prime. So, all these three are notations for a Hermitian matrix. What this defines is that given a matrix A, we construct its conjugate, complex conjugate, we take its transpose, and if this is equal to the given matrix A, then A is a Hermitian matrix. We can of course as well take the transposition first and then we can take the conjugate also. It would not matter whether we take the conjugate first or transpose next or this way. Then if this property is satisfied, then the given matrix is said to be a Hermitian matrix. Now let us take an example like A is equal to 2 plus 3i, 3 minus 2i is equal to this. Then I can construct its conjugate, that is the conjugate of all the elements. This is 2, 3 minus I, this is 3 plus I, and this is 5. Then let us take the transpose of this matrix. The transpose of this is 2, 3 minus I, 3 plus I, and 5, and which is same as A. Therefore, this is a Hermitian matrix. Now, you can observe two properties here. The diagonal elements are all real. So, if the diagonal elements are not real, then its conjugate will not be equal to that. So, if once the conjugate is equal to this, then these are all real elements, because this will then read some A plus IB is equal to A minus IB like that. So, that we can simplify and then show that the diagonal elements should all be real elements, and these are all complex conjugate of each other, these elements. So, this is 3 plus I, this is 3 minus I. So, they are conjugate of each other, so that when we take the conjugate and then transposition of it, then we get back the matrix as A. Right, one more observation that we can make here, and that is if A is a real matrix instead of complex, then its conjugate is same as that itself. That means we can drop this conjugate part, that is A is equal to A transpose, that means a symmetric matrix. Therefore, the Hermitian matrix is the generalization of symmetric matrix to complex matrices. Now, let us define an orthogonal matrix, which is a very important matrix for our purpose, because the finding the eigenvalues using numerical methods would entirely depend on construction of orthogonal matrices. So, we define the orthogonal matrix as A inverse is equal to A transpose. That means the inverse of a matrix A is same as the transposition of a matrix A. The simplest example of an orthogonal matrix is, if you take the 2-dimensional coordinate system, we take your coordinate system xy coordinate system, rotate this entire system by an angle of theta and form a new coordinate system. This is our this, and this is your coordinate system. Then the transformation that gives you the coordinate change of coordinate system from xy to x prime y prime is governed by this particular coefficient, the coefficient matrix cos theta minus sin theta cos theta. If we apply it on a particular vector, what I would give me is that a rotation by an angle of theta in the plane. So, we shall call this gives you, if you apply it on A on any vector y, what we shall say is that it will give us a plane rotation, that means rotation in a plane. This is the simplest example of an orthogonal matrix, because they are orthogonal system of coordinates and we are rotating by an angle of theta. So, this will give us an orthogonal rotation. So, what this will provide is a plane rotation, but this is an orthogonal rotation. Now, we can very easily show some of the properties that a determinant of A is always equal to it can be plus minus 1. So, this is here cos square theta plus sin square theta is 1. So, the determinant is always 1. So, this is a very important matrix. We can show it. For example, its inverse is, I can find its determinant is 1. So, I divide by this. Therefore, the cofactor of cos theta is cos theta, cofactor of this is cos theta, cofactor of this is minus sin theta, it is a transposition. So, I will have here this is equal to sin theta and this is equal to minus sin theta, and the A transpose, if I transpose this, I will get here cos theta minus sin theta sin of theta cos of theta. So, that this is equal to A inverse. So, therefore, A inverse is equal to A transpose and this is an orthogonal matrix. As I said, this is a very important matrix for us. If A is a complex matrix, then I would define what is known as a unitary matrix. We will call it as a unitary matrix. Yes. Now, again we are taking A as a complex matrix. A is a complex matrix. Now, what we definition is A inverse is A bar transpose. That means, we can also call this as A is equal to A star, where A star we have given earlier the definition for conjugate transpose. Therefore, A inverse is equal to A conjugate transpose, then we shall say that this is a unitary matrix. Now, you can see that when A is a real matrix, then A conjugate is same as A, therefore, A inverse is equal to A transpose. That means, we go back and show that this is an orthogonal matrix. Therefore, the definition of an orthogonal matrix generalized to the complex elements would produce a unitary matrix. And as I said, orthogonal matrix is very important, and we very often the systems that we arise in the practical problems, they are not all real coefficients. So, many problems are there in which we get complex elements. Therefore, instead of using the orthogonal plane rotations, we shall use the unitary matrices to produce the required rotations, but with the complex elements. Then we give one more definition of a positive definite matrix. Positive definite matrix. The general definition is, if I take an arbitrary vector, x is an arbitrary vector, x, if I take an arbitrary vector, then I form its conjugate transpose A, we are talking of a matrix A, x transpose A x. I will put a underscore for this. This is greater than 0 for all x not equal to 0, and this will be equal to 0 only for x is equal to a null vector. That means, if I take the arbitrary vector x, then perform this operation, this is your conjugate transpose A x, then this is going to be a number, because if A is a n into n matrix, then you have vector x is equal to n into 1 vector, then this will be transpose of this. Therefore, this will be 1 into n, A is n into n, and x is equal to n into 1. So, these are the orders of the matrices, so that I would simply get this as 1 into 1. Therefore, what we get here is a number, and this number should be strictly positive for arbitrary x, then this matrix shall be called as positive definite. Even though this is theoretically possible for us to do it for a 2 by 2 or 3 by 3 4 by 4 matrix, for a general matrix it will be difficult. So, you need some alternative way of looking at it. An alternative way from this definition is all the leading minors of A should be strictly positive. Leading minors means the determinant of 1 into 1 leading matrix, the determinant of leading 2 into 2 matrix. So, that we are taking all the leading minors, not all the minors, but only the leading minors, that means the diagonal, all along the diagonal element. So, all the leading minors, all the leading minors are greater than 0. All leading minors are greater than 0. This is a simple test which we can make it. Let us take a very simple example. Let me take this example. Let me take this matrix as A. So, I would therefore first of all consider 1 into 1 minor, that is the leading minor. 1 into 1 leading minor is 3 greater than 0, that is the 1 into 1 minor. So, then I need 2 into 2 leading minor, 2 into 2 lead, that will be simply determinant of 3 2 1 4, that is equal to 12 minus 2, that is 10 is greater than 0. Therefore, by this definition this is a positive definite matrix. A is positive definite, therefore A is positive definite. So, this is a simple criteria that one can use to find out the positive definiteness of a matrix. This is possible for small matrices. We could as well take here say x is equal to this vector, x can be taken as is a 2 by 2 matrix. So, I can take this sum A plus IB, A2 plus IB2, and then construct my x transpose A this one. So, that will be A1 plus IB1, A2 plus IB2, sorry, with a negative sign, that is your, we are talking of the conjugate transpose. So, the conjugate of this will be minus sign, transpose will be given row vector, and A is your 3 2 1 4, and multiply this by x. So, multiply this by x. So, I would therefore multiply this by A1 plus IB1, A2 plus IB2. I multiply it out, simplify the whole thing and show that this is indeed a quantity which is strictly positive, which is possible for us to write it in the perfect squares and then simplify. Let us now come back to some more concepts which we require before we construct numerical methods. Now, we start with the matrix system Ax is equal to B. We mentioned earlier that the representation or the definition of x depends on various different problems. So, we are not really concerned what this definition of x is, it represents some physical solutions. Therefore, we shall use only the matrix A and the right hand side vector and then discuss how to solve this particular problem. Whatever we get solution out of this is the physical representation of the problem. So, this matrix I shall call it as a augmented matrix. That means A is augmented by the right hand side vector A B. For some of the methods which we know, which we learnt earlier from the solution of the linear equations, let us briefly discuss and see what are the difficulties in those methods which you cannot apply for large systems. Let us assume that determinant of A is not equal to 0, then A inverse exists. If determinant of A is not equal to 0, A inverse exists. Then I can write down the solution of this problem as x is equal to A inverse of B. Now, secondly, if I have a right hand side is 0, that means it is a homogeneous system, then what we produce is a homogeneous system. What you produce is a homogeneous system. Ax is equal to B. Then if determinant of A is not equal to 0, then by this definition we will have x is equal to A inverse into null matrix. So, that is equal to 0. Therefore, this is always a trivial solution. There is no other solution for the problem except a trivial solution if A is a non-singular matrix and you have a homogeneous system. Therefore, the only way that this problem can have non-trivial solutions is that the determinant of the coefficient is equal to 0, then it will have non-trivial solutions, then we produce non-trivial solutions. So, for a homogeneous system we need that the determinant of A should be equal to 0 in order that the non-trivial solutions for this particular problem exist. Now, let us also define an eigenvalue problem which we have already have learnt earlier. So, let us define what is an eigenvalue problem. What we have here is a system A into x is equal to lambda into x, where lambda is a real or complex number, it is a real or complex number. The problem is to determine lambda and the corresponding x. If I bring this to the left hand side, I can write this as A minus lambda into I. Lambda is a number, therefore, I will write down lambda into I into x is equal to 0. So, I bring everything to the left hand side. Now, this is a homogeneous system of equations. Now, we just said that if it is homogeneous system, non-trivial solutions exist only if the determinant of the quotient matrix is 0. Therefore, for non-trivial solutions we need for obtaining the non-trivial solutions for this problem we will require A minus lambda I is equal to 0. We require a determinant of A minus lambda I should be 0 in order that non-trivial solutions exist. What is A minus lambda I? Let us just represent what it looks like. This is equal to A11 minus lambda into I, that is only lambda in the diagonal elements. So, this is A12 A1n, this is A21 A22 minus lambda A2n, AN1 AN2 ANN minus lambda, determinant is equal to 0. Now, I can expand this determinant. There is lambda in each of the diagonal elements, therefore, it will give me a polynomial of degree n in lambda. Therefore, this gives us polynomial of degree n in lambda. So, that we can write this as polynomial degree n in lambda is equal to 0. That is what we would get here as this. Now, we have discussed earlier the methods for finding the roots of a polynomial. Therefore, we shall use those methods for finding the roots of this particular polynomial, which is a polynomial degree n. Therefore, it has got n roots, lambda 1, lambda 2, so on lambda n, which may be real, which may be real and distinct, which may be complex, and a combination of real and complex also. Therefore, we shall be interested also in a later lecture to finding the eigenvalues of a given particular problem numerically. If once lambdas are known, I can go back to this particular equation and then find out what will be the values of x. A into x is equal to lambda I into x. I take a particular lambda I as a one eigenvalue. If I take this as a one eigenvalue and then construct this particular problem, and I solve this particular problem, find the, we know that the non-trivial solution exists now for lambda I. Therefore, non-trivial solution exists for this. Therefore, x will be the solution of this is solution, and this is called the eigenvector. So, this is called the eigenvectors. So, lambda I and the corresponding solution we can now put xi suffix I, for this also we can put suffix I. Therefore, the eigenvalue problem is to determine the eigenvalues and the corresponding eigenvectors xi. So, that will complete our eigenvalue problem. One important property of the eigenvalues of a matrix is we define what is known as spectral radius of a matrix. So, I would like to define what is the spectral radius of a matrix. The spectral radius of a matrix is simply the definition, the largest eigenvalue in magnitude. So, I find all the eigenvalues, find the largest eigenvalue in magnitude. So, magnitude of largest eigenvalue is equal to the spectral radius, and the notation that we normally use, this rho of A denotes the spectral radius of a matrix. Now, for example, say if I have got a let us suppose a matrix has got these 3 eigenvalues, 3 by 3 matrix has got 3 eigenvalues. So, we are talking about spectral radius A as the largest eigenvalue in magnitude. Therefore, 5, therefore, spectral radius of A will be equal to 5, the largest eigenvalue in magnitude is equal to 5. It is possible that a complex pair may turn out to be having the largest magnitude, then that would be the largest magnitude of that particular matrix. So, this is an important concept that we shall be using while proving the convergence of the iterative methods that we are going to construct for solution of these equations. Now, if I have a eigenvalue problem, it has got n eigenvalues. So, we have got n eigenvalues. It is possible that the system that is given to us may have n independent eigenvectors, that means for each eigenvalue one eigenvector, or we may be short also, that means if we have a repeated eigenvalue, say eigenvalue is 1 1 1, it is possible that the system does not have 3 linearly independent eigenvectors for when it has got a repeated eigenvalue. So, let us assume that it has got n linearly independent eigenvectors. So, let n linearly independent eigenvectors exist, linearly independent eigenvectors exist. Now, these linearly independent eigenvectors, we can take it as the basis of a vector space, and then we shall say that this forms a vector space which we call it as eigenspace. Suppose you have got a 2 by 2 matrix A, I have got 2 eigenvectors there. So, those 2 eigenvectors can form the basis for a 2 dimensional coordinate system. Just like your x axis y axis coordinate system, we can have any other vector in 2 dimensional coordinate system as the basis for the 2 dimensional system. Therefore, since these are n linearly independent eigenvectors, they can form an vector space called the eigenspace. Therefore, they form a vector space. They form a vector space which we call it as the eigenspace. In this case, A has got a complete system of eigenvectors. If it is short, we shall say it does not have a complete system of eigenvectors. If n eigenvalues, as the system has n linearly independent eigenvectors, we shall say that complete system of eigenvectors exist. Complete system of eigenvectors exist. Now, the importance of this is which we are going to use this concept also in constructing numerical methods for finding some eigenvalues. If I construct the eigenvectors, if in the solution of the eigenvalue problem also we need a initial approximation for a eigenvector. because we want to construct the eigenvalues eigenvectors, I need a approximation for the eigenvector. I would assume that the eigenvalue problem we are talking of has a complete system of eigenvectors, so that the any vector in this space can be written as a linear combination of this. For example, in 2-dimensional coordinate system, any vector can be written in terms of the base vectors I and j, 3i plus 4j or any other. So, we are able to construct any vector in terms of the base vectors. Similarly, in this space, if I take any vector y, I can write this y in as a linear combination of this eigenvectors x1 x2 x1 x3 xn. So, eigenvectors. So, if I take the, that means this implies that if y is an arbitrary vector, then I can construct, then I can always write y as c1 x1 plus c2 x2 so on cn xn in the eigenspace, This is a very important concept for us, which we shall be using while we are constructing the numerical methods for finding the eigenvalues. Now, before we actually define some numerical methods, let us also look into the concept of the consistency and inconsistency of a system of equations, which we have earlier studied also. Let us define what we mean by consistency and inconsistency of a system of linear algebraic equations. So, what we have here is Ax is equal to b. Now, what we really mean is consistency means solution exists, inconsistency no solution. So, that is a general definition we can define. So, that is the solution exists, then we shall say it is consistent, and if there is no solution, then it is inconsistent. Now, the method which we know earlier is that I construct the augmented matrix A B, then if the rank of A is same as the rank of this augmented matrix, then the system has a unique solution, only one solution. So, the first property that you know is that the rank of A is equal to rank of AB, rank A is equal to rank of AB is equal to n. Let us also take it as equal to n, the system is n, then a unique solution exists, then a unique solution exists. Now, if the rank of A is equal to rank of AB, but it is some n. So, unique solution exists means let us also say therefore, it is consistent. So, we wanted the definition of consistency. Then let us take that rank of A is equal to rank of AB is equal to some number r, but less than n. Rank of A is same as rank of AB, it is r less than n. Then system is consistent, but it has infinite number of solutions. So, this system is consistent, but has infinite number of solutions, infinite number of solutions. Now, the infinite number of solutions can also be characterized further. What really this shows is that your system of equations, there are many dependent equations, and the dependent equations, how many are there? It depends on what is this value of r. If this value of r is n minus 1, then we have one dependent equation. if this value is n minus 2, you have 2 dependent equations. If this is r, then there are n minus r dependent equations. Now if you have one dependent equation, then one variable is extra, so we can take it to the right hand side and then say it gives you one parameter family of solutions. Similarly, if you have n minus r as dependent equations, it will give you n minus r parameter family of solutions. It is not only infinite, but it is also a infinite parameter family of solutions. So this has got n minus r infinite family of solutions, n minus r infinite number of solutions. Therefore this is the number of infinite, the parameter n minus r parameter solutions, you can call, we can also call n minus r parameter family. And lastly, if the rank of A is not equal to rank of AB, if rank of A is not equal to rank of AB, then the system is inconsistent, and that means this implies that the problem has no solution. That means rank of A is 2 say, and rank of AB is 3, then in that case the system has no solution. We shall reduce the augmented matrix into an upper echelon form using the elementary row transformations. We shall find the rank of A and the rank of the augmented matrix. Some inconsistency like 0 is equal to some 5 or 0 is equal to 2, something like that would come, so that the inconsistency is apparent there, and therefore the problem has no solution. Now this, when we are constructing numerical methods, our numerical methods should automatically and implicitly tell us that the given system, because we are tackling of thousands of equations, we do not know in advance what errors have been committed, whether we have produced consistent or inconsistent systems. Therefore the numerical method should automatically take care and tell us that yes, the system that you have produced, the inconsistent system, is wrong, or you can say that it has infinite family of solutions, so you have many dependent equations in that. So these concepts should automatically come out of the numerical method that we are constructing there. Now the methods that we have, just for a few minutes, just stop in 2-3 minutes. We shall define these methods that we have into two classes as the direct methods and iterative methods. What we mean by direct method is the same definition that we have given it in the case of the solution of a nonlinear equation, that these methods produce the solution in finite number of steps. Therefore this produces solution in finite number of steps. Therefore we shall be able to give in this case the operational count or the total number of operations that is there in this particular method can be given. So the operational count can be given. Operational count can be given. The other methods are the iterative methods. In the iterative methods we have we start with an initial approximation to the solution of the problem, then refine it further and further using the numerical method, so that we finally have the solution which converges. So we have start with initial approximation, we start with an initial approximation, and construct the later approximations, then construct iteratively the solution. Of course we must guarantee that the solution converge. So, we must theoretically show that this iteration sequence of the solutions, that means we have got the sequence of solutions vectors xi as the solutions, they all converge, and that requires the iterative analysis of the solution problem. We can do the analysis of this iterative procedure and then say that our method that is being used is a convergent method, it will always converge, and or we can say that under these conditions the method is converged, and when once we take the initial approximation in that format, the solution will also converge. So, let us stop here.